a minute, okay? Today, I just need to rant about this book. I am feeling a lot of emotions. So, if you don't know, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is a classic book. This is the first classic book I've willingly read ever in my entire existence. In high school, we didn't really read too many, classics. There were some thrown in there, but it was a lot of, Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, our bisexual king.
To continue, I'm really heated. Basically, if you don't want spoilers for this book, please click off. If you don't care and you just want to hear me rant about it, please stay. I feel a lot of feelings about this. Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, this book is making me heated. The fire alarms are making me feel heated because, fire. First, I'm going to start off with how I was feeling at the beginning of reading this. At the beginning, it was very hard for me. There were a lot of big words, deep philosophical discussions, very, intellectual, pompous sort of energy going on. I feel like that's usually the energy I get whenever I think of a classic book or whenever in the past I have been forced to read them in school and stuff. But once I got over that hurdle and was really, into the plot, my opinion of this book completely did a 180. In the beginning, I was like, I don't know if I can read this whole thing. This is just too much. Especially with this one pessimistic asshole of a man who I will really just rant about in a moment. The plot, it was crazy, it was dark, it was twisted, it was so beautifully written. After the end, I have a lot more of an appreciation for it. All right, well, let me just start. This is gonna be all over the place because I don't have a cohesive train of thought, so please bear with me. Let's just start from the beginning. So this book revolves around our three main characters. So we have Basil, who is a painter. We have Lord Henry, which is the corrupt asshole I have mentioned previously. And we have Dorian Gray, who is our main character in this book. Basil has been painting Dorian Gray, who is this beautiful, godlike specimen of a man. He has the, hot cheekbones, sexy godlike man, okay? And everyone adores him for his beauty and his grace and his youth. And so Basil takes fascination with him, and I think he's madly in love with him, but he's obsessed with him. At that time, they can't draw that fine distinction between gay and just sheer obsession because sign of the times. I think he's going that way, but that's just a side note. But yeah, this man was obsessed with him for his beauty, and he loved painting him, and Dorian was his muse. And he was doing this beautiful portrait of him, and, he expressed this desire for Dorian to his friend, Lord Henry, who, he knew from the past. And Lord Henry is a scumbag. We'll just say it out there. He is a fucking ass bitch hoe who I will hate till I die. Basically, Lord Henry is the antithesis of Basil, because Basil is more he has a heart, he feels things through, he's very kind, and I resonate with him because he's an artist, because I paint and stuff, I dabble. Lord Henry is very pessimistic, very opinionated, and thinks he knows everything about everything. I'll just leave it at that. He's an asshole. So upon talking with Basil and Lord Henry, Basil's like, hey, yo, dude, this man, my man's Dorian, he is a snack and I'm obsessed with him and I love painting him. He's my muse, and he gushes about him to Lord Henry. And Lord Henry's like, oh, I must meet this man at once. I have to get to know this Dorian that you desire so much. And so he doesn't want to introduce them, but he ends up doing it anyway because Lord Henry is friggin' persistent little bitch. So he introduces them, and Lord Henry takes liking to Dorian immediately. Dorian is gravitated towards Lord Henry, and they become close. Dorian is at this phase in life where he's easily like moldable, he's still innocent, you know, he's still youthful, and so Lord Henry slowly corrupts him with these thoughts of the only things that should matter in life are your youth, beauty, and pleasure. So he starts taking those ideals and wishes, oh, if only I could remain as young as this painting, I will never be that young again. That is the most important thing to me.
Just to clarify, Lord Henry does this by making Dorian fear that once he ages, people won't love or appreciate him because he's not as beautiful as he was in his youth. There you go.
Because of Lord Henry's words that really resonate with Dorian. You know, he wishes for that so deeply, so intensely. And then eventually he is with him more and more, he becomes slowly and slowly more corrupt. Dorian, to me, is just evidence that the nature versus nurture debate, I always truly firmly believe that depending on who you're surrounded with, that has more of an influence on you as a person than your genetics. That's my opinion, and I feel like this book kind of shows that, and how easily we can be molded into who we are based on who we surround ourselves with, what kind of content we consume, all that sorts of stuff. So, here is the kicker. Dorian eventually, he is very fond of the arts because Lord Henry has made him have an appreciation for art and beauty and everything. And so he goes to this theater and falls in love with this woman whose name is Sybil, and she is an actress. And he watches her night in and night out and sees how pure she is and how beautiful she is on stage and how talented. And he proposes to her, and they kiss and they fall in love. He is so obsessed with her, he invites Basil and Lord Henry to see her one night, and that night, Sybil sucks ass. She is not acting for shit, she's awful, and, you know, Dorian is embarrassed. He's like, I'm sorry I wasted your time, blah, blah, I'm not in love with her anymore. Because in actuality, he was only in love with her artistic ability and her talent. They meet after the show. She's like, since I'm more obsessed with you, I don't really want to be an actress anymore. This is what real love feels like. I don't have to act anymore. And I'm so happy we're together and all that. And he's like, well, I don't love you anymore because you're not talented. And she weeps and she's like, I will work hard again. I want to be with you. I'm in love with you and all that. And Dorian's not having. He's like, goodbye. So engagement broken. Her heart broken. She is so heartbroken she kills herself. That's a plot twist. We don't like that. And then Lord Henry has the audacity to glorify her suicide and is like, Dorian, you should be honored that this woman took her life for you. What a sign of pure adoration, pure love. That's what you want, to be adored and loved and feel youthful and all that. Dorian initially felt guilty, and so he was gonna actually go back to her and move on with the marriage, and then she killed herself. So that was traumatic for him. And then so he believes what Lord Henry says just to feel kind of better about himself. But in that intermittent time, Sybil told her mom that they were engaged. Her mom told her brother, and her brother was like, hey, if this man breaks her heart, I'ma kill this bitch. Lord Henry gives Dorian all of these books, and he is very fascinated. He reads them. He becomes more and more corrupt as time goes on. Basically, that's the premise of the whole book. He's just becoming more and more corrupt and more of a horrible human being. Around 20 years go by. He's just, awful. He hasn't aged nearly at all because he sold his soul to the devil. I don't read classics often. Don't know when that happens in the book, how that happens in the book, but I know it happened. And so basically the painting itself is now aging, whereas he is staying youthful. And so he hides the painting in the tower of his lovely, beautiful home because he's a rich bitch, and locks it away behind a door that he only has the key to, and he puts it under a sheet. Eventually, he invites Basil to his home. They haven't really spoken in a long time. And Basil was asking, like, I still see some good in you, and, you know, I want to bring that out of you. I miss the Dorian that you used to be, the innocent, pure Dorian that he, you know, knew and loved. And he said, like, Lord Henry really did a number on you, bitch. And then he was like, well, there's no hope for me. Like, I can't change. It is what it is, and all that. And then he's like, you are like the incarnate of the devil and shit. And he's like, oh, you want me to show you, bitch? You want me to show you? So he brings him to that room and reveals the painting to him. And since Basil painted it, he blames Basil and saying that that portrait ruined his life because it showed him that he would only be that young for that point in time. And as you know, the painting itself, he is aging, and, you know, Dorian in the flesh is still appearing as youthful as ever. And Basil sees his name signed, and then he feels really sad and guilty, and Dorian, you know, his anger arises because he blames Basil as well. And then he kills Basil. He's like, bitch, bye. You ruined my life. And so he took his. So then he's like, oh shit. Now what am I gonna do with this fucking body? He pulls in someone who he met like within that 18-20 year span. His name is Alan, who was a student and a scientist. He was good at chemistry and everything. And he enlists him to help dispose of this body. Alan does not want any part of this. He's like, Dorian, I can't with you. I don't want to be near you. I thought I would never see you again. But then Dorian blackmails him with this letter. I don't know what the contents are in the letter. I don't know if there's theories about it or if I just missed it when I was reading, because that is also possible. But he blackmails him into following through and killing Basil. And so he gets the supplies brought into his home. The chemist disposes of Basil's body with chemicals. Then Alan kills himself because he can't handle keeping Dorian's secret and carrying that guilt. Then Dorian burns Basil's things. He gets all that guilt from, you know, Sybil, Basil, Alan. It's really coming to the surface. He's seeing Basil's face everywhere. He's getting paranoid. He is fainting, and he's on edge. Like, his guilt is catching up to him. He is stressed, so he goes to this bar and he drinks, and there's women trying to flirt with him, and he's like, bitch, if you just want my money, take my money and leave me alone. So he throws his money at, like, the bitch, and she calls him Prince Charming, which is what Sybil used to call him because she never knew his name. And then her brother heard this woman say he was Prince Charming and comes at him with a gun and is like, you're the man who broke my sister's heart, and now I'm gonna kill you because you made her kill herself. And then he's like, oh, take me into the light. And then he pulls him into the light, and he's like, oh, fuck, you're youthful as shit. That's not possible. You know, you can't be the right guy. And he's like, oh, sorry, bro. And he trembles. I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you pull a gun on the wrong person, that's what's gonna happen. And then Dorian is paranoid that her brother is going to find him and kill him, until he finds out that he was killed by someone else. So, yeah, he was like, oh yeah, I'm in the clear. No one knows. I disposed of everything. There's no evidence. But then he confides in Lord Henry, kind of implies it, because they were talking about Basil's disappearance, and he was like, oh, well, what if I killed Basil? Lord Henry's like, oh, bitch, murdering is for the common folk. Like, oh, we don't do that. Like, who? Us? No. Lord Henry also said that once you're evil and corrupt, you cannot change, because Dorian was like, well, I really want to change and all this, and he felt like he did a good deed because he was expressing how he was in love with this woman who was a peasant, and he pretended to be a peasant with her, and he would say like, oh, and like she loved him for who he was, and he's like, well, like I've done things I regret, and I'm a corrupt asshole. And she's like, oh, how could you be so corrupt if you're so beautiful? That's only for like the old and ugly people. And I'm like, who are your parents? Like, who is teaching you this bullshit? He breaks her heart and he leaves her, and he thinks that he's doing a good deed because he isn't influencing her in the negative ways that he's been influenced. So he feels like, I'm doing a good deed by letting this woman go and breaking her heart. And she is stronger than Sybil, so she'll be fine. Lord Henry's like, oh, well, like, she'll marry someone else, but she'll always look at you like, oh, I lost this man that I once loved or whatever. And he's like, well, okay, that sucks. His guilt continues to catch up to him. And, you know, Dorian's like, no, I have changed. I've been trying to change, because his guilt's catching up with him. He's like, he wants to change. He's coming to kind of a self-actualization, a self-realization of all the bad things he's done and how guilty he is feeling about all of these things. And then he goes and he looks at the portrait because he thinks, oh, since I did a good deed by letting that woman go, maybe the portrait will revert back to its more youthful state, but it becomes worse. His face is still as old as it was, but there's also now blood in his hands and on the floor of, you know, the scene in the painting. He takes it as a sign like, oh, I need to confess for my sins. I need to tell people what I did. But at the same time, then he's like, well, since there's no evidence and I say these things, people are gonna think I've gone mad, and I can't live with that. Because of all this inner turmoil, he thinks there's no way out, so he's like, I need to destroy this painting because it's ruined my life. So he stabs the painting, and then at the end they find him with a heart stabbed in his own chest, him aged to his proper age in the painting like it was in the beginning, and the only way they recognized him was by looking at the rings on his fingers. The thing is, though, when it was coming up to it, I was like, bitch, I knew he was gonna kill himself. Like, I knew it. Like, near the end, I'm like, he's gonna, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. This is how I get sometimes when I'm reading a book that makes me feel things. Like I said, this was beautifully written. Lord Henry, I hated the fucker. You can definitely tell that this was written in a previous century. And so this author was able to get away with glorifying suicide, which, you know, is not good. Also, saying things about women in the beginning that kind of turn me off. If you like corruption, if you like dark shit, if you like murder, if you like pompous writing, you will like this book. I hope that this was entertaining. I don't really know. I just was very passionate, so I thought I would share my thoughts. I'm sorry if this wasn't what you signed up for when you subscribed. If you're subscribed, if you're not subscribed, consider it. I mean, I think I'm cool. Hopefully you do too. I'll see you next time, perhaps, and we'll see what the fuck's going on with this channel, because it's gonna be all over the place, content-wise, upload-wise. I'm just trying to get back into the fun of this for myself, so deal with it, and have a great day. The fire alarm is going off because our fire alarms are fucking shit, and I fucking hate everyone because it's annoying as fuck. Sometimes I feel like I have undiagnosed ADHD, but we're not gonna go into that. I'm not gonna diagnose myself today.